Hey everybody, this is Doc Mack coming to you from the Galloping Ghost Arcade out in Brookfield, Illinois. It's October 14th, 2013, and we are joined here tonight with Matt Walters, our current Gamer of the Year. Since the arcade is opened, we've really had countless high scores set here and world records set here, and who better to talk to than Matt Walters, who has set so many high scores and world records here. And we really hope to find out a little bit more about how you got into gaming and a little bit more about you as a player.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. First thing, how old were you when you got into video gaming, and did you start on arcade games or console, or how did you get into playing video games?
My first memory of playing video games was definitely the Atari 2600 around 1978 or 1979. I was definitely in New York. My parents lived there until I was about 4 years old. And I think for my fourth birthday, or maybe my fourth Christmas, they bought me a 2600 Atari. And the first game I remember playing was actually bowling, the old Atari bowling game.
Sure.
It was my favorite game. And I would say that I was primarily what you would call, I guess, a console guy. I mean, I had the 2600 and I had an Apple II Plus computer that I played Brickout on, which was basically Arkanoid in the old days. And both of those games, Pitfall was another game that I played quite a bit on the Atari 2600, and Pac-Man and Frogger. Those 4 or 5 games, I pretty much played those exclusively for the first 3 or 4 years. I played video games from like 79 to 82. And then around 83 to 84, when I moved to California for a couple of years, I got exposed to the other systems, Intellivision, Coleco, the advanced Ataris, and then it started to broaden from there, and I started playing arcade games as well.
Sticking with consoles a little bit, what were the other consoles that you played on? Like, did you grow up through the 8-bit Nintendo days?
Yeah, 16-bit absolutely.
Era?
Well, that was the first time that I ever thought that I was halfway decent at playing a video game was when my friends and I started playing Nintendo 8-bit when I was in 7th grade. For my 13th birthday, I got 2 things. I got the Beastie Boys' License to Ill on vinyl, and I got the Nintendo 8-bit system with 4 games. And all we did all night was play the record over and over again while playing the 4 games in my Nintendo system, literally the entire night. So
4 games were?
Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Kung Fu, and Excite Bike. Those 4 games were the first 4 games that I had for the Nintendo, and we played all of them until we looped all of them. I mean, Duck Hunt, what are you going to do? I mean, it's...
Sure.
But, and Super Mario Brothers took some time, but those 4 games certainly... I mean, Super Mario Brothers was a really impressive game when I saw it in the arcade before the Nintendo 8-bit system came out, because I saw that was one of the first times I was ever exposed to a game in the arcade before I'd seen it on the console. Was going to, I think, a Showbiz Pizza. At the time, that was Chuck E. Cheese's rival. Chuck E. Cheese later bought out Showbiz, but it was the same model. They had video games and they had pizza, really bad pizza. But I went to a birthday party when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I saw Super Mario Brothers in the arcade. I'd never seen anything like it before. So definitely the transition from like 82 to 87, there was just a huge... I saw, when I was in California, the oddest system I saw was the Intellivision, by far. The Intellivision was conceptually unlike anything else. The games that I was seeing, at least. There was some medical game where you had to find a virus. It was almost like Inner Space. Remember that movie?
Right.
But it was really odd. The objective of the games was very odd. And then the Coleco, I think, one of my neighbors had that, and that had Zaxxon on it, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the only game he played on ColecoVision. So my impression of the ColecoStation was that, well, everything looks like it's in diagonals on that system when I was 8 years old. Instead of it being like, oh, that's just the game, I assumed it was the system. So you know, like everybody else, I had very regimented and fragmented experiences with video games growing up until really I got into my teenage years and I started going to places like Dennis's and Fun Zone and places around here where I saw a lot more games, and consoles became a lot more advanced, obviously, in the late 80s and early 90s. We also got more information about what else was out there just as we grew up. So it's a really interesting arc because everybody's experience is different, you know. So
do you sticking with console gaming right now? Do you still play console gaming now, or?
The last console that I had was the PlayStation 1, and I played like Gran Turismo and a couple other games. I played Symphony of the Night was in that, right? Castlevania.
Yep.
And I played Resident Evil 2, I think it was, and a couple of Final Fantasies. But I never really got into it that much. So I went from Nintendo 8-bit to PS1 in like 98, 99, and I played a lot of that with those 4 or 5 games. But I haven't bought anything since then because if I bought a console and got into the kind of RPGs that I want to get into, it would be very big trouble for my entire life. Like I would go down a rabbit hole and you just wouldn't see me. So I've just consciously put off buying anything beyond a PS1 because I knew that it would consume a lot of time to have a console at home. And one of the great things about an arcade is you go there and you play there. And when you leave it there.
Sure. Eventually, we have to close.
Well, yeah, and that's the
Sometimes.
idea, is that I would play all the time if I had a console or any other way of playing at home. I actually prefer to come here, play here, and leave it here. So.
Going to arcade games, do you remember what the first arcade game that you played was?
The first arcade game that I probably played, the first experience I had in an arcade that I vividly remember was actually in Las Vegas, Nevada. Back in the early 80s when I grew up, my parents took me to Las Vegas. And in the early 80s in Las Vegas, there was nothing to do for children. I mean, nothing. There was no water parks. There was no, kids areas. There was literally, they didn't want your kids. They didn't want you bringing your kids around the casinos. And they certainly weren't going to make any sort of allowance for the fact that somebody was underage, even if they were like a kid. Like I was 8, I think, at the time. So they stuck me in an arcade for literally 4 days. So the first memory I really have of playing arcade games is learning Super Sprint and just playing the death out of, I think it was Super Sprint. It was whatever game that came out. It might not have been Super Sprint. It was whatever racing game in that line was out in the early 80s, like 83. That game was the game that was at the arcade that I just honed in on. And I played that all the time. But I didn't go to that many arcades outside of going to Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz for a party until I was in high school, actually. And then I started going to Fun Zone, and I started going to Dennis's Place for Games. Dennis's Place for Games consumed a lot of my time. Summers home from college at Northwestern. I was there probably every Saturday night in 1993.
And what were you playing there?
Pinball. My friend Jeff and I, who you've met, Jeff Simons, he plays pinball competitively in Seattle right now, and he and I really zoomed in on the pinball games. Our other friend Seth Killian was playing a lot of Street Fighter at the time,
Sure.
and was starting to get competitive in the Street Fighter 2 scene, which he became obviously much more widely known for. Seth and I and Jeff all grew up in the suburb of Chicago, near West, but the interesting thing is Dennis's, we really started to get into pinball because pinball we felt as though was sort of accelerating in a different way than the arcade games that we were seeing. This is an odd thing about the specific point that I hit when I started going to arcades in 1993, 94. The door panel pinball machines were really taking hold in that era, and those are some great games. I mean, you have Addams Family, Twilight Zone, you have Indiana Jones, and everything in that genre, Attack from Mars, all in a row, just really impressive, really well-built games in my opinion, pinball side. But on the American video game side, you just didn't have that many great titles coming out in that era, in my opinion, that were really catching my eye in the same way. I really wasn't into the type of gun games that were being released then, or the type of fighting games. I really liked the classics when I did play arcade games. So when I went to Fun Zone, I played nothing but Gyrus. And Gyrus was something that I could relate to, but I couldn't really relate to the video games that were coming out in the early 90s. So we just played pinball. Jeff and I just played pinball all night, every night that we went there. And we got really good at Twilight Zone and Attack from Mars and those titles of that era, Star Trek Next Generation, the 92 to 94 era of video games where I think door panels were just coming into their own, as a system. So,
moving on. Again, you've set a lot of high scores here. What was your? Do you remember what your first world record set here was?
My first world record was Castlevania versus Castlevania, for sure. And the way that came, the score wasn't the Twin Galaxy score. It was just an arcade world record at the time. And I took that down, and we did some research, and then I got the world record sometime in February of 2012. And then around that time, too, I got a couple of local scores, Nibbler and Gyrus. Those are the first 3 scores that I had here. Yeah.
And currently, what are some of your records that you hold and the titles that you hold?
I currently have the world records in Donpachi, Dodonpachi Diojo, Strikers 1945 Plus, Mission Craft, Turbo. I have the world record in Ikaruga. I have the world record in Metal Black, and I have some local scores. I have R-Type, Jailbreak. Oh, and I have Versus Castlevania as a world record as well. And I have a couple of other local scores. I had Raiden Fighters as a world record until last night, where Jamie Tibbetts of an Underground Retrocade took that back last night after many attempts, and I'm trying to get that back tonight as we speak. So,
one of the things that people really enjoy here at the arcade is always when we stream, we do live playthroughs. Again, with so many people here, seeing somebody going after a score, you always draw a fairly good-sized crowd of people around you. How is that for you? Like, do you enjoy having an audience? Does it bother you? Does it add to the stress of going after a score?
no, it doesn't actually. I enjoy talking to people while I play. It actually helps me to concentrate. Some people don't like that at all. They think that it distracts them. But I enjoy the camaraderie of the arcade, and so I enjoy having people around watching or talking to me. Some of my scores were set with a couple of different people, regulars that come around the arcade, just having a conversation with me while I wasn't even paying attention to what I was doing, and I just happened to get a hold of the game, and I said, wait a second, let me see if I can do this. But and then I really enjoy the interaction as well over the internet, the streaming and stuff like that. I think that's a really remarkable way to connect with people, not just in the neighborhood who come to the arcade, but also people who are fans of the arcade online or who have been to the arcade before and know, what that's like, or they've met me, or I've met them, or I know who they are, that kind of a thing. That we've had a lot of people who come through here who are part of the arcade scene all around the country. So a lot of them, I think I remember during the Metal Black runs, I had people like George Strain, who he's been here a few times, he's been Underground Retrocade a few times, but he happens to live in Atlanta. So he was watching on stream, and other people like that who are around the scene. So I like that a lot, actually.
When you're going after a score, do you play any of the emulators, or do you only play here, or?
I only play here. I watch video of the people who do emulate, and I do look up tricks and tips that are available on the internet. Sometimes those aren't always out there. We had a heck of a time with a couple games where we couldn't find any information on them and didn't understand scores. But generally speaking, a lot of the games that we have, there's stuff out there, there's ideas about gameplay that I think are vital. Emulation I'm not a huge fan of, just because, like I said, with consoles, for me personally, I don't have anything against anybody using it, but for me personally, I don't think that I would play as much here if I played on an emulator, and I like playing in this arcade. I like doing things here, So emulation is not something that I'm interested in as much, but it's not something I have anything against. It's just a personal choice,
Sure. When you're going after a score, do you tend to only play that game, or do you try to still mix it up even though you're focused on getting a particular score?
I usually stay on the game until I get the score. It's very rare for me not to just obsessively play one game until I get the score if I'm locked in. There's a few games that I've come back to, but by and large I'll stick with one game until I get a score, or until somebody else puts up a score that I can't realistically get or keep up with that level of progress.
Has there been a game that you are to the point where you don't think you can get the score and you've walked away from it?
Yeah, there's 2 games that I've played here that I've walked away from the score without having achieved it. One of them is Pengo, of all games. I've played that game on and off for like a year, and I've improved at it quite a bit, but I just can't quite get to that level. What's interesting is I went out to Fun Spot, and Robert Macaulay is the current Arcade #1 scorer on Pengo. At the time, James was, because they hadn't had any scores in a while, but Macaulay can just run circles around Pengo. He's just great. And I didn't know there's only 16 boards. He explained to me that there's 16 boards and then it loops. So actually, if you did, and I've been to board 11 or 12. So it kind of heartened me to hear that I was close to the end of the game and that I could probably come back to it and just keep plowing away at it. But Pengo's a game I walked away from, and I walked away from Mars Matrix because at the time I was focusing on too many games at once. I intended on coming back, but I haven't been able to get back to it yet, and so I don't know where I'm at with that.
Currently, what has been the toughest goal that you've achieved here, and the score or that you're most proud of?
The hardest thing that I've ever done. Well, I would say that the Metal Black was the toughest single achievement that I've ever done, given the fact that the game is the only game where the game was beaten, the score was fairly robust, and it was going to take, me getting close to what we conceive of as being a fairly perfect score, for me to get the record. But the definitely Diojo's doing the first 2 levels full chain, maximum score. I haven't gotten much farther than pretty much the maximum score full chain both levels, but that was very difficult. That took months. So I'm really proud of those 2, definitely.
What are some of your future goals that you have here at the arcade?
Well, I would like to get back to playing classics. There's 2 things I'd like to really do coming up here. I'd like to finish some of the games, just, completely clear one loop. A lot of games that a lot of us have scores on, we are like 5/6 of the way through the game. So I want to go back and I want to finish the ones I'm close on. That's one of the things I'd like to do, just to finish the game. Forget about the score or the record or whatever. But I want to get back to classics. I would really like to see how far I can take a Miss Pac-Man or a Frogger. I really want to see, just coming in every day playing that game only. Because I don't think that we've really had that experience here where one of the regulars is just really taking one of those really robust titles, like really far. We've had a couple of Donkey Kong scores in the 800,000s. I don't know if that's been kill screened yet, has it? For example, but I really feel as though it'd be a really great accomplishment for somebody to kill screen one of those classic games here, in any form. Whether it's a great score or it's just kill screen the game. So I want to get back to that for sure.
If you could have one world record in any game, if you could be known as the world record holder in that game, what game would it be?
That I don't have the record in.
That you don't have.
I would like to be the world record holder in Frogger.
Frogger.
Definitely Frogger. I would love to be able to be the first person to kill screen Fluff. I don't think it's been kill screened. I think that it's been close, but I don't think Frogger has been kill screened yet. I think that it's been I don't know how many, 256 screens is what it usually is that correct? So I think they've gotten to what seems to be board number 220 or 230. They've gotten really close, but yeah.
Is that on your list of things?
I hope, yeah. I would like to, I'm definitely going to take that game pretty far this year at some point. It's for sure. I'm definitely going to make a serious run at the record here, and then see how far. Yeah.
What are the other ones that you're now on your list that you hope to?
This year? Well, I would like to get. I would really like to get. I would like to get Nibbler back actually, which is not unreachable here because of the nature of the board set. I would like to get. I would definitely like to get Raiden Fighters back tonight. I would like to make a run at Mars Matrix again, and I would like to make a run at Zexx again, which I had briefly last year. And Jimmy Tibbetts took the score in the time he was coming here once a week at some point, put up 1.2.
And when you started here, you weren't concerned with scores.
I was not, that's correct.
How has it been? Again, when you first started coming here, you were more. Your goal was always to finish games.
Right.
How is it now? Has it changed how you play games?
Definitely has changed. There are some games like Diojo where the incentives are not to progress, but to keep dying until you get the perfect run on the first level and then the second level as well. So it definitely changes the way you play video games, and you just have to treat certain games like they're not about the score, and certain games like they're not about progress. But I would say that I would say that score is a dimension of play, and I would say that progress is a dimension of play. And it's just become more nuanced, I would say, since I've been here. As you play more video games, you just see more beauty in the detail, and so when you see more complex gaming in terms of the strategy and the structure of it, a good example is Raven Fighters, where it's like there's so many different ways to do things and levels of play and meta play and mega play that you have to do 4 or 5 things simultaneously. Progress and score, progress, score, and collecting certain things in certain orders or chaining things. That's really interesting, I think. And so that's how my opinion has changed. I sort of see the other dimensions now, and I try to incorporate all of them. I realized I didn't have a very refined outlook when I first came here, and now I've sort of refined my outlook on the games.
Since you've been coming here a few years, like you usually attend a lot of our events, and what's been some of your most memorable moments here at the Galloping Ghost Arcade?
Well, number one, it's got to be winning Gamer of the Year. That was an incredible honor, and it was definitely a great day for me personally, and a great event at the arcade that I was able to be a part of in a big way, obviously. But you know, outside of that, I was really happy to be a part of the podcasts that we've done. I think that we've really been able to discuss topics, a wide range of topics all over the community at a very high level, come up with some great ideas. So that's been something that has been a real source of pride for me. But also, I think another thing that I really enjoyed being a part of was the second anniversary, where we tried to do everybody playing video games, and most people, we did do it. We accomplished a world record of number of people playing video games simultaneously, and there was a real spirit in the arcade that day, in particular, that was really representative of what it should be like. And it just brought me back to when there was somebody at every machine. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a while since I've seen something like that happen. It was really special to see that, you know. And then just, you know, the tournaments we've been able to have with other arcades as well has been fantastic. And just meeting people here. I mean, on a personal level, like I've probably made 5 to 10 very close friends at this arcade in the last, 2 years I've been coming here. And that's not a small thing. You know, when you already know a lot of people and you have your friends and you're able to come here and connect with people, that's incredible. You know, it's arcades are not known for that kind of dynamic, but maybe they should be. And maybe that's where we're headed with this. You know, the fact that we can develop a community here in Chicago that's dedicated to video games and community is great. And so that's been a great personal memory for me as well.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for talking. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, I'm Doc Mack here at the Galloping Ghost Arcade, joined with Matt Walters, our 2013 Gamer of the Year. Hope to see everybody around the arcade. If you see Matt around, feel free to stop over and say hello to him, and hope to see everybody here soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.